There's a spot in me heart which no calling me on. There's a depth in me soul never sounded unknown. There's a place in my memory, my life, that you feel. No one ever take it, no one ever will. Sure, I love the dear silver that shines in your hair, and the brow that's all furrowed and wrinkled with care. I kiss the dear fingers so toil-worn for me. Oh, God bless you and keep you, Mother the Queen.
Stuff. All right, now I'm reading from this book. It's called The Proceedings of the Royal Irish Academy, second series, volume 2, Light Literature and Antiques, Dublin. This is published from the years 1879-1888. It says here, I'm on page 47 of this book. Bring you right here. It says, now at two primitive Irish races, which he designates as Firbolg and Celt. He has given typical figures. One of these, the Firbolg cranium, will in all probability correspond with the remarkable dolichocephalic skull that I have described. These long-headed, black-visaged, dark-haired, swarthy aboriginals, swarthy, black-haired, black-visaged, swarthy aboriginals possess skulls that are principally characterized by their extreme length from before, backwards, or what is technically termed the antero-posterior diameter, and the flatness of their sides. All right, again, swarthy aboriginals. He says, in addition, now we find similar conditions of head still existing among the modern inhabitants of this country, particularly beyond the Shannon, where the darker fur-bulked race, even a darker race than these swarthy aboriginals, may still be traced as distinct from the more globular-headed, light-eyed, fair-haired Celtic people who lived to the northeast of that river. I'm on page 53 of this book now, and I go down here to this paragraph, and it says, the most probable explanation appears to be that it was the result of one of those piratical descents or invasions of the Irish coast made by robber Vikings, Danars, or Black Danes. Again, Black Dane, Danish, Black Norsemen, Black Vikings, Black Danes, Black Vikings, the 6 kings, Vikings VI, 6 kings, the 6 Danish kings, Danites, and their ferocious allies from the islands of Scotland, which were so common in the 9th and 10th centuries. These invasions took place subsequent to and were altogether different from the Scandinavian settlements in Ireland of Lachlands or Azure Gentiles, who are described in the chronicles of the time by their distinctive feature of being a white or fair-haired race. All right, so different from the Black Danes.
All right, and what does it say here? Family names from the Irish, Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Norman, and Scotch, considered in relation to their etymology, with brief remarks of the history and languages, peoples to whom we are indebted for their origin, by Thomas G. Gentry. This is from 1892. Now it says here, Dever, originally Duber, from Dub, which means black. Dub, black. Like Dublin, the city of Dublin is the city of black. Dub, man, a dark complexioned man. Duibur, dub, a dark complexioned man. So dub, Duffy is also like dub, pronounced dub or dub or black. Dub, black, an individual, a black person, a black dub. All right. Dougal or Douglas, right? Douglas from black, dark, glass, green, gray, dark green, dark gray. Dougal, so Douglas means black too. Douglas, Dougal from dub, black, gal, stranger, a black stranger. Dougal's from the same roots.
All right, this is the book, The Scottish Nation, or the surnames, families, literature, honors, and biographical history of the people of Scotland by William Anderson. This is volume 2, 1863. I'm on page 71 of this book, and it says here, Duff, a surname adopted from the Celtic, in which language the word means black. All right, Duff means black. Sebald, in his History of Fife, says that as Niger and Rufus were names of families amongst the Romans, from the color and complexion of men, so it seems Duff was from the swarthy and black color of those of the tribe or clan of Macduff. All right, swarthy, black, tribes, Macduff. It is the family name of the Earl of Fife in the peerage of Ireland, okay? Ireland, descended from the Duncan Macduff, Thane of Fife, who overthrew Macbeth and gave such effectual aid to Malcolm Canmore in obtaining possession of the throne.
This is the crest of Great Britain and Ireland, Dominion of Canada, India, and Australasia, derived from best authorities and family records. All right, this is an official, the Fairbairns crest, family crest. All right, collection. This is one of them right here. These ain't slaves. These are family crest. You know. And this is a close-up of number 7. Again, this is what it looks like. Again, this is the Royal Book of Crests of Great Britain and Ireland, Dominion of Canada, India, and Australasia, derived from the best authorities and family records by James Fairbairn. All right, 1883. You hear Riddles of Prehistoric Times by James H. Anderson. All right, Riddles of Prehistoric Time, J.H. Anderson. The Iberians in ancient times inhabited the western and southern part of Europe, the northern part of Africa, in fact all parts reached from the Mediterranean Sea, the Basque in Spain and France, the little dark Welshmen, the Scotch and black Celts to the west of the Shannon River in Ireland, as well as the same kind of men in Brittany and Aquitaine in France, the Guanches of the Canary Islands and the Berbers in Africa are all probably the remnants of the race. Right? So he's grouping all these people to the same people.
A lot of you've seen his books, you know, The Negro Question, and there's like about 6, 7, 8 parts by Lee Cummins. Now, this is the basically the introduction of the book. It says that this book has been designed to shed light on the missing link between the two sciences, history and genetics. We have been trained to trust without question what we are taught in the academia, absolutism of these United States. Now a new science has emerged that has produced results that are in direct conflict with the history that is being taught in the classrooms, all right? That science is genetics. But what is this issue? The pebble in the shoe that is putting genetics against history. The world history that is being taught in the classrooms omit the existence of the Black Scots, Black Irish, Black Brits, Black Italians, Black French, or Black Europeans that were sold directly into the American slave plantations. Again, what I've been saying, who was really coming in over here in ships by the thousands and thousands and thousands? That was Europeans.
Oliver Cromwell in Ireland. All right, so pay attention to this. It says Oliver Cromwell was Lord Protector of the Commonwealth of England, Ireland, and Scotland after the assassination of the Scottish English King Charles I. Upon taking military command of the Commonwealth, he invaded Ireland. And history states that he committed genocide in Ireland. All right, this is facts. This is history, and he did this to people of color, thousands of them, against the black population, so-called black population, black Irish. The black Irish that he didn't kill, he sold into the slave trade. The what? The slave trade, the real Middle Passage. This is what we've been learning recently, right? Right? If anybody foreign came, it wasn't mainly Africans. It was actually European indentured servants. They were sending convicts, undesirables. Remember, we've already gone through the primary sources, and we're going to continue. I'm going to show you way more of this proof. In 1641, Cromwell had 300,000 black Irish. Again, 300,000 black Irish sold into the North Atlantic slave trade, and in 1650, he had 100,000 Irish Scottish children sold into the Barbados. This is history. We've gone over this. Now, this is the family Gilbert crest, as he's saying, Irish coat of arms. All right, get a little close up, you see? This is the Gilberts from Ireland. You can look this up. It says this is an image of black Irish coat of arms from the Gilbert family. 3 of the Gilberts related to this coat of arms have been traced to Barbados. Thomas Gilbert, Barbados 1635, all right? Do the genealogy, do the research, follow up if you want to prove it. Francis Gilbert, Virginia, 1736, and Robert Gilbert, Barbados, 1678. He's letting you know these are black Irish, these people that landed in Barbados. The timeline fits with the eyewitness accounts of the Irish being shipped into the slave trade, but I have greater witness than this, he says. It says here on page 32, North Atlantic Slave Trade, Rod Hart Report, 1976. I look it up. The black Irish that came into Jamaica had 2 places of origin, either Ireland or Barbados. Close to 300,000, all right? 300,000 black Irish came directly from Ireland, and the rest came from Barbados. 70% of all black slaves on the island of Barbados came from Ireland. Again, 70% of all black slaves on the island of Barbados came from Ireland. In the 1925 census of Jamaica, there were 916,000 people on the island, and only 2% were white. And that's what I've been trying to tell you. Now, let's be logical. If we know there's not Africans coming over here, all right, but they are bringing hundreds of thousands of Europeans as indentured servants over to the sugar plantations, where are they today? Where's their descendants? Shouldn't it be more light or pale, the population? This is what he's trying to tell you. Let's be logical. In 1925, there was 916,000 people on the island, and only 2% were white. And that's because the aboriginals were so-called Negro, and most of these Europeans that were being sent over there were black Europeans. All right? Now, this includes Marcus Garvey's family. They're Irish. You understand why he was saying go back to Africa? He ain't even from here. Now, we're going to get into all that stuff. So this oversight on the part of the world's historians to include these black Europeans in the North Atlantic slave discussion went unnoticed for the past 400 years. The invention of genetics plus the record of the eyewitnesses, he's talking about primary sources, which we have read. People from those times telling you, just like Abraham Lincoln, right? Video, people that knew him telling you he's dark, swarthy. All right, these are eyewitness accounts. They cannot be disputed. All right, this is the key to discovering the missing link between history and genetics. The Black Earl of Ireland, I guess, next. All right, here we got the image of Earl Gilbert the Gilbert, or the Black Earls of Ireland. Right, this is in a window glass, maybe in a building or church. All right, so you can see from 1141, Ireland. All right, this image says image location book of Tewkesbury Abbey and Wikipedia Encyclopedia. So the image of Gilbert, the Earl of Clare, Hertford, Ireland, can currently be found in the St. Mary the Virgin Church and Tewkesbury in the English county of Gloucestershire. Not only is this black Irish Earl being depicted as a black man, but his coat of arms depicts him as a black man. We got this other image of coat of arms. It's the first Earl of Annesley in Ireland. It says here, let me just zoom out. With Annesley coat of arms and signature image, location Chichester Monuments. Remember the the Ching, all this family in England, Chins, Ireland. This is an image of Lord Belmont, of the first Earl of Annesley, in Northern Ireland. The Annesley family coat of arms is to the left of Lord Belmont's image. The coat of arms and the image of the Earl speak for themselves. It is becoming apparent that the last names of the black nobility of Europe have been assumed by the conquering English.
So I'm in this website. It's called accessible.archives.com. All right, and it has an article here. Just wanted to read. Found it very interesting. It says Irish indentured servants in the colonies. It says our 18th century newspaper collection includes the Pennsylvania Gazette and the South Carolina Gazette. Both newspapers carried many advertisements for the sale of indentured contracts and the recovery of runaway servants. All right, not just slave servants, indentured contracts. All right, so we're going to read some newspaper clips and you can verify these again from the Pennsylvania Gazette and the South Carolina Gazette in the years they specify. All right, here it goes. Indentures for sale. All right, for sale. August 19, 1762, to be sold, an Irish woman servant who has 3 years and 3 months to serve. Inquire at the new printing office. All right, so she has 3 years left in her term, in her service. All right, so this person is selling his servant just like property. All right, just like chattel, just like property. He got, here, you want 3 more years before it's over? I'm done with her. And now we got October 29, 1766, to be disposed of 2 Irish servant boys, times the one having 6, the other 7's year to serve. Wow, so full contract still, 7 years to go, and are suitable either for town or country business. You can put them to do anything you want. Tobacco field, cotton field, or whatever you want to use them for. The above servants' times are disposed of for no fault, but only for want of employment. For further particulars, inquire to William Parr. All right, so it says August 10, 1738. Just arrived from Dublin in the snow, Jolly Bacchus, Peter Cullen, commander, a parcel, likely English and Irish servants, tradesmen, shoemakers, tailors, weavers, black and white smiths, carpenters, husbandmen, sundry other tradesmen, also a parcel of likely servant women, fit for either town or country work, whose times are to be disposed of by Thomas Walker, butcher, or Samuel Walker, or John Dumont, or the said master on board. The 8th snow, now lying off against Market Street Wharf, where all due attendance will be given. Philadelphia, all right? So you see how they were just selling people, servants, just like property. We're going to get to something very interesting. Let's keep reading some of these. It says May 25th, 1734, says to be sold by Ripton Hutchinson, was selling on the bay extraordinary good butter and firkins, herrings, cheese, Irish potatoes, men's and women's servants. So he wasn't just selling his servants, he was also selling, cheese, Irish potatoes. So he was including these people, like just like the potatoes property, just selling it like chattel, right? Irish linens or several sorts and good Barbados rum. All right. So his display included humans, terces and barrels. The source is the South Carolina Gazette from May 25th, 1734. It says May 13, 1766, to be sold for no fault, an Irish indented servant maid who is an excellent seamstress and has upwards of 4 years to serve. All right, she still got 4 years to serve. All right, now check this out. We're gonna get into some interesting things here. All right, this is the main reason I wanted to show you guys this. So it says August 16, 1750. A runaway on the 12th instant from Joseph Jackson of London Grove, Chester County, an Irish servant man named William Farrell, of middle stature and brown complexion. Brown complexion. Who? An Irish servant. We're talking about an Irish servant. He's not white. He's not pale. He's brown complexion. Aren't you brown complexion? So is this a white person or a so-called Negro? Anything would be up to conjecture, but we have a description of him clearly stating and describing him as brown complexion. All right. Had on when he went away, stripped flannel jacket, a brown sailor's jacket, a pair of coarse trousers, stripped drawers, a felt hat, and checkered shirt. His hair cut off. Likewise, all right, so it's going to say that he also ran away with somebody else. So it says, likewise, ran away with the aforesaid servant, an Irish servant, another Irish servant named Thomas Collard. All right, belonging to Samuel Ramsay of Londonderry. Samuel Ramsay, so that was his servant, in the said county, of a dark complexion. of a dark complexion. So this Irish servant man, this other runaway, Thomas Collard, is of dark complexion. So his boy, Joseph, let me see, what's his name? William Farrell, who is brown complexion, ran away, right? With him, another English servant or Irish servant, sorry. And he's also of dark complexion. They're both colored people. So what are you going to take from dark complexion? I know you're going to say, well, oh, black means white, Kurimeo. All right, well, right here it says dark. It doesn't say black. I mean, yeah, black. It says dark complexion. What is dark complexion? All right, this is an Irish servant. These are the Negro Irish, is what I'm trying to explain to you. They were sending also Irish Negroes, so-called Negroes, dark people of color, Irish people of color, indigenous people from Ireland over here. They were sending them over here too, along with the white people. Dark complexion. This is from 1750. It says, in his pock-marked, had on a green double-breasted jacket with clear buttons and red linen, black breeches, black wig, his other clothes not certainly known. Whoever takes up and secures the said servants, so that their masters may have them again, shall have £6 rewards for both, or £3 for either. All right, so you'll get paid by Joseph Jackson or Samuel Ramsey. Now, are these so-called Negroes? That's the other thing I want you guys to understand. We have to research all of that. Just because we think in their owners, slave owners, don't mean they're white. It's called Phases of Irish History by Eoin MacNeill, professor of ancient Irish history in the National University of Ireland from 1920. Page 62, Pre-Celtic Inhabitants of Ireland, says, so far as the Iberian theory is not mere vacuum filling, it appears to rest on a single passage of Tacitus. He is describing the Silures, a British people whose territory was in the south of Wales, and who offered a very fierce resistance to the Romans. The swarthy complexion of the Silures. Again, the swarthy complexion of the Silures, he says, the prevalence of curly hair among them, curly hair, and their position over against Spain argue that the ancient Iberians must have crossed over from Spain and occupied the territory. We have often heard the occurrence of similar physical traits in the west of Ireland ascribed to a more recent Spanish mixture. In 1851, a new variety of Norsemen arrives on the Irish coast. They are called the Black Heathens, the Black Foreigners, the Black Loglanocks, in contradiction to the fair heathens, fair foreigners, or fair Loglanocks, who had been here before them. The Welsh chronicle, the Annals Cambria, makes it fairly clear that these black heathens were the Danes. They came in hostility to the Norwegians, with whom they fought fierce battles, and we have already seen that for a number of years the Danes held the chief power in the Hebrides.
All right, and this is the Journal of the Anthropological Institute of Great Britain and Ireland, volume 17 from 1888. Long before the Roman conquest, the intrusive Aryan Celt had been intermarrying with the older inhabitants of the country, who doubtless belonged to more than one race, the result being that the so-called Celtic race is an amalgamation, all right, of races different physiologically but dominated by a common moral and intellectual character. The consequence of subjection for a long series of generations to the same conditions of life, it has become a commonplace of ethnology that the so-called Celtic race includes not only the fair complexioned Aryan Celt, but also the black Celt or Iberian with the dark skin, black hair and eyes and small limbs. The subject, however, is much more complex than this simple division would imply. We have seen that under the red Celt are included two distinct varieties. The black Celt is equally irreducible to the single type, while the fact that two types of red and black recur in the same family, my own, for example, not only indicates their long continued intermixture, but suggests the existence of intermediate varieties. It's called plantation production and white proto slavery, white indentured servants, and the colonization of English West Indies, 1624, 1645. All right. So indentured servants were in the Caribbean, West Indies, plantation and production in white proto-slavery. And this is from the Americas, volume 41, number 3, from January 1985. You can find this on pages 21 to 45, about 25 pages, published by the Cambridge University Press. So it says here, the effective colonization of these islands, and they're saying St. Christopher, which is St. Kitts, in 1624, Barbados, 1627, Nevis, 1628, Montserrat and Antigua in 1632 was possible. So these islands were possible because of early emergence of large plantations, which were clearly designed for large-scale production and the distribution of commodities upon the world market. They were instrumental in forging an effective and profitable agrarian culture out of the unstable frontier environment of the 17th century Caribbean. These plantations therefore preceded the emergence of the sugar industry and the general use of African slave labor. But again, they're letting you know in this article, right, that this indentured service, this preceded, all right, this was before these agrarian culture plantations, these plantations that preceded were before so-called Africans were coming, before, all right, their whole story. Kunta Kinte, right? They developed during the formative years when the production of tobacco, cotton, and indigo dominated land use and utilized predominantly European indentured labor. The structure of land distribution and the nature of land tenure systems in the pre-sugar era illustrate this. Most planters who accelerated the pace of economic growth in the late 1640s and early 1650s by the production of sugar and black slave labor, so-called black, starts to hijack. We already know indentured servitude continued up until the 1800s. Already owned substantial plantation stock with large numbers of indentured servants, right? So even before they keep trying to throw in those tags, African, black, they're letting you know the drop in between, that these were plantations were stocked with what? Large number of indentured servants, not Africans, stocked with indentured servants. Continuing in this article in part 2, it says the system of commodity production was built upon the labor of thousands of indentured servants imported from England, Ireland, Wales, and Scotland. All right, these were the people that were supplying these Caribbean plantations, the early colonies with, and it was Europeans, again, not Africans. Unlike the Spanish settlements in the Greater Antilles, Barbados and the Leeward were not densely populated with Indians who could be reduced to chattel slavery. All right, so unlike, again, what are they letting you know here? Major drop right here. Like again, like I told you in my video, you know, who the Spanish and Portuguese were really enslaving. Who were they really enslaving? When they're talking about all these so-called Negroes that the Spanish and the Portuguese were supposedly transporting everywhere in all their colonies, these were Indians. Like they're letting you know here, it's not like the Spanish settlements, right, which they had what, a bunch of Indians to what, enslave or put into chattel slavery, or right, the Aboriginals. They weren't talking about Africans there either, right? A righteous and unruly lot, Irish indentured servants and freemen in the English West Indies, 1644 to 1730, by Hilary McD Beckles. And this is from the William and Mary Quarterly, volume 47, number 4, October 1990. You can find this on pages 503 to 522, about 20 pages. All right, so continuing further down in the article, starts talking about the convicts and the political prisoners. So it says Barbados was the favorite West Indian dumping ground for political prisoners during the Commonwealth. On September 15, 1649, after the Battle of Drogheda, Oliver Cromwell informed John Bradshaw, president of the council, that the enemy were about 3,000. They made a stout resistance, but those who escaped with their lives are in safe custody for the Barbados. They're ready to be sent to the Barbados. In October 1655, he ordered that all English, Scots, and Irish prisoners in Dorchester jail be forthwith sent to Barbados. All right, convicts. In addition to political prisoners, many hundred of Irish were legally defined by the state as social undesirables and transported to the West Indies. So if they said, oh, they don't like you, or they see you look kind of funny, kind of poor. You're walking around like, he's an undesirable. I don't desire him. I don't desire that guy. So he got sent because I don't desire that guy. He got labeled and not desirable, and he got transported to the West Indies to help meet the insatiable demand for sugar planters for labor. All right, we just got the other article about sugar plantations. Same thing, and again, not Africans. They're supplying these plantations with. Transporting such people had begun with the English poor under the Charles I. Cromwell's regime carried out the practice on a far larger scale with the Irish. In 1654, for example, governors of several Irish counties received orders to arrest all wanderers, men and women, in such orders other Irish within their precincts, as shall not prove they had such a settled course of industry as yielded them a means of their own to maintain them. All such children were in hospitals or workhouses, all prisoners, men and women, to be transported to the West Indies. You hear this? And you think all these people were pale skinned? Why is the West Indies so dark complexion then? Wouldn't there be more descendants of these so-called white pale Europeans? Even though there is today, we do find, like Irish descendants and all that, and we do know the story of indentured servitude, and we think it was just part of it, and just no. There were also colored people that looked just like people from Africa coming in, but they were Irish, they were Scot, they were German, and these people eventually were classified as Negro people.
Vast human cargo transported on tall British ships bound for the Americas. They were shipped by the hundreds of thousands and included men, women, and even the youngest of children. Whenever they rebelled or even disobeyed an order, they were punished in the harshest of ways. Slave owners would hang their human property by their hands and set their hands or feet on fire as one form of punishment. They were burned alive and had their heads placed on pikes in the marketplaces as warnings to other captives. Now, do we really need to go into all the gory details? We know all too well of the atrocities of the African slave trade. But are we talking about the African slave trade?
Nope.
King James II and Charles I also led a continued effort to enslave the Irish. Britain's famed Oliver Cromwell furthered this practice of dehumanizing one's next-door neighbor. The Irish slave trade began when James II sold 30,000 Irish prisoners as slaves to the New World. His proclamation of 1625 required Irish political prisoners to be sent overseas and sold to English settlers in the West Indies. By the mid-1600s, the Irish were the main slaves sold to Antigua and Montserrat. At that time, 70% of the total population of Montserrat were Irish slaves.
All right, you heard that? Irish slaves, so-called slave, Irish, not Africans. We're gonna get a little bit further on, a little documentary about Montserrat and its Irish culture, all right?
Ireland quickly became the biggest source of human livestock for English merchants. From 1641 to 1652, over 500,000 Irish were killed by the English, and another 300,000 were sold as slaves. Ireland's population fell from about 1.5 million to 600,000, just in one single decade. Families were ripped apart as the British did not allow Irish fathers to take their wives or children with them across the Atlantic. This led to a helpless population of homeless women and children. Britain's solution was to auction them off as well. During the 1650s, over 100,000 Irish children between the ages of 10 and 14 were taken from their parents and sold as slaves in the West Indies, Virginia, and New England. In this decade, 52,000 Irish mostly women and children, were sold to Barbados and Virginia. Another 30,000 Irish men and women were also transported and sold to the highest bidder. In 1656, Cromwell ordered that 2,000 Irish children be taken to Jamaica and sold as slaves to English settlers. Many people today will avoid calling the Irish slaves what they truly were, slaves. They'll come up with terms like indentured servants. This is to describe what occurred to the Irish. However, in most cases, from the 17th and 18th centuries, Irish slaves were nothing more than human cattle. If a planter whipped or branded or beat an Irish slave to death, it was never a crime. A death was nothing more than a monetary setback. England continued to ship tens of thousands of Irish slaves for more than a century. Records state that after 1798, the Irish Rebellion, thousands of Irish slaves were sold to both America and Australia. One British ship even dumped 1,302 slaves into the Atlantic Ocean so that the crew could have plenty of food to eat.
For a relaxed, get-away-from-it-all holiday, visit Kinsale in the sunny southwest. Laze in a boat along its Atlantic shore, anchor at Fox's Bay, Roach's Bluff or Sweeney's Well, or just lounge in the shade of the tree-lined beaches. If you feel more energetic, you could always climb Fogarty's Hill or nearby Fergus Mountain. And for the really enterprising, there's a day trip up the Galway volcano. Or if you just want to take it easy, why not rent a holiday villa with its balcony looking west over the Atlantic? Yes, every taste is catered for in Holiday Kinsale.
Unfortunately, it's a bit far to take the wife and family. To be precise, 4,128 miles from Cork, give or take a few. It's on the Emerald Isle, all right, and they'll feel quite at home among its Atlantic beaches, green fields, harps and shamrocks. But the trouble is that this Kinsale is at the wrong side of the Atlantic. It's Kinsale in Montserrat, a West Indian island, the Emerald Isle of the Caribbean, and home of a unique race of people, the Black Irish.
There's a spot in me heart which no color. There's a depth in me soul never sounded unknown. There's a place in my memory, my life, that you feel. No one ever take it, no one ever will. Sure, I love the dear silver that shines in your hair, and the brow that's all furrowed and wrinkled with care. I kiss the dear fingers so toil-worn for me. Oh, God bless you and keep you, Mother McQueen.
There's much in Montserrat besides Mother McCree to remind Patrick Robert Riley of his ancestral home. Though now a British colony, evidence of Irish origins are as aggressive in Montserrat as in Boston or New York. And the harps and shamrocks are not just commercial emblems. The first 3 governors of Montserrat were Irish born, and the local police are proud of the Kathleen Ni Houlihan figure with harp and cross, which forms their coat of arms. So Montserrat makes quite a fuss of St. Patrick's Day, aided and abetted by Patrick Robert Riley.
Lately, it has become quite a big day. The radio stations seem to devote almost the whole day, or almost the whole day, to singing Irish songs, interviewing people about Irish customs and so on. And I usually have the honor of being called, because I usually go down to town dressed all in green on St. Patrick's Day. And, well, the folks actually look out and said, "Here comes Mr. St. Patrick's."
The title Emerald Isle of the Caribbean is given to Montserrat partly because of the lush green foliage of its countryside. The colour green is everywhere, on roofs, doors, notices and school uniforms. But there's a good deal more to the Irish connection than a mere identity of national colour. This is Standard 4 in the Infant Jesus preschool in Plymouth, Montserrat. The faces may not be terribly familiar to you, but I think some of the names will. Mrs. Catherine Ryan is the teacher. Mrs. Ryan, could I have a look at the list of names and see if I recognise some of them? There's Devon Riley, Sherilyn Ryan, Joanne Burke. Let's try some of the names. What's your name?
Eugene Fleming.
Eugene Fleming. Is that right?
Eugene Fleming.
Good man, Eugene. And what's yours?
Sean Castles.
Sean Castles. And what's yours?
Jerome Mead.
Jerome Mead. Is that it?
Yeah.
Good man. Now let's try some of the girls. What's your name?
Trouble.
What is it?
Trouble.
Joanne Burke. Is that right? Good girl, Joanne. And what's yours?
Michelle Castle.
Michelle Castles. And what's your name?
Yeah, Irish.
What's your first name again?
Colin Irish.
Colleen. Is it? Colleen Irish. Is that your name?
Yeah.
Good girl, Colleen. And what's your name?
Michael Ryan.
Michael Ryan. Well done. And what's your name?
Miriam Cathy.
Marianne Carty. Is that it? Good girl, Marianne. And what's your name?
Sandra Fowler.
Sandra Farrell. In fact, well over half the names of the 13,000 people who now inhabit the island of Montserrat are distinctively Irish. In parts of the island, the proportion of Irish names would be as high as 9 out of 10. Apart from the more familiar Irish names, you also get words like Irish, Dublin, Cork, even Kinsale used as surnames, which would seem to make the Montserrat children more Irish than the Irish themselves.
The first Irish landed in Montserrat in 1632 at this bay, Kinsale Bay. The plantations just inland from here are still to this day known as Broderick's Estate, O'Gara's Estate and Galway Estate, and the little village just around that headland is St. Patrick's Village. Who were they, these first Irish settlers? Well, a group came out from Cork with names like Barry, Sullivan, Driscoll, Roach and Ryan, and they settled in the neighbouring island of St. Kitts, hoping to trade in tobacco there. But after a few months they had such violent rows with the English Puritans in St. Kitts that they left there for the smaller island of Montserrat, and they hoped peace.
It was the feeling of despair after the Battle of Kinsale which drove these first settlers out of Ireland. The name Kinsale was obviously prominent in their minds as they gave it to their first landing place in Montserrat. Andrew Power, who died in 1720 at the age of 56, may have been the son of one of those first adventurers who crossed the Atlantic to St. Kitts and thence to Montserrat.
A second group of Irish settlers arrived in Montserrat at about the same time as the St. Kitts evacuees, and they landed down there at Carr's Bay. They came from Virginia in America. Lord Baltimore was just crossing the Atlantic to organise his settlement of English Catholics in Maryland. He brought with him his chaplain, an English Jesuit, Father Andrew White. With typical Jesuitical industry, Father White kept a diary of the voyage. January 26th, 1633. By noon we came before the island of Montserrat, wherein is a noble plantation of Irish Catholics, whom the Virginians would not suffer to live with them because of their religion. So 2 groups of Irish came to Montserrat from places over 1,000 miles apart, in each case as victims of religious persecution.
For almost 10 years, these 2 groups of Irish settlers found peace. The high mountainous ridge down the centre of Montserrat gave abundant water, and the warm, moist climate enabled them to farm almost as they had in Ireland. Cattle were exported from Galway to Montserrat and seemed to thrive when crossed with the local stock. But now the Irish were the masters, and like all other West Indian planters, they had their quota of African slaves. A census of Montserrat taken in the mid-17th century lists the population as Irish 2,000, English 700, Scots 52, African slaves 1,000. It's a widely held view in Montserrat today that the Irish landowners treated their slaves with more care and kindness than did the English and Scots. Dr. Howard Fergus, university lecturer in Plymouth, has just completed a history of the island. I asked him what brought about this change in the fortunes of the Irish in Montserrat.
I think that this had to do with their religion, which was Roman Catholicism. In fact, although the English in St. Kitts, which is just nearby, did make a treaty with the French in 1627 against their common enemy like the Spanish and the Caribs, the English never really trusted the French, and this was partly because of their religion. This is why, for instance, England occupied the center of St. Kitts while the French were at both ends. So when Montserrat became the asylum for Roman Catholics from Ireland and elsewhere next door, the English were again suspicious of the Irish and consequently of the people in Montserrat.
And why should this suspicion of the French transfer to the Irish?
Well, as you know, the French were essentially Catholics, and it was feared that, especially with events in England, happening in the Stuart period, that the Irish in Montserrat and the French Irish in St. Kitts could rise up. In other words, there could be a rebellion in Montserrat against the planter lords.
So suddenly and with relentless vigour, the tide began to run against the Irish Catholics of Montserrat. Twice the French conquered the island, but each time they were beaten off by the English. This left the Puritans in power. Anti-Catholic and afraid of another French-Irish alliance, they kept the Irish down. Attendance at Mass was forbidden. Catholic priests were denied entry. The Irish appealed to Rome for a priest, and in 1650 a Limerick Jesuit, Father John Stritch, volunteered to make the dangerous journey. He first travelled to St. Kitts, and after a few months set sail for Montserrat. There was little hope of his getting past the port authorities dressed as a Catholic priest, so Father Stritch disguised himself as a timber merchant. He set up camp, carrying on his timber business by day, and by word of mouth let the Irish know of his real identity. He risked imprisonment if caught, and so did all who came to receive the sacraments from him. He speaks of the joy of the Irish when they heard he had arrived. They came to Mass at his hideout, travelling at night and using cliff paths.
A great number of the Irish immigrants were either indentured servants or prisoners. They arrived here at the wharf in Montserrat. The first of the indentured servants were only finishing their time of service when the sugar boom hit the West Indies. Montserrat planters turned to sugar and the price of land rocketed. There were no longer any small plots available for the freed indentured servants. The problem was added to by the fact that sugar is a labour-intensive crop and thousands of workers were required to harvest the cane. So the prisons of Ireland were emptied of anyone, political prisoner or criminal, who was strong enough to make the crossing of the Atlantic and harvest the sugar.
The courtroom in Plymouth has heard quite a few Irish names, and still does even today.
Monday's court, Noel Skerritt, larceny. Joseph Galloway, throwing missiles in decent language. Neville Dwyer, battery. Sylvester Hogan, larceny. Raymond O'Gara, indecent language, arming with offensive weapons, throwing missiles. Martha Skerritt, larceny. Tomorrow's court, William Sullivan versus Donald Fergus, assault and battery. Agnes Roach versus Maggie Buffant, damages for trespass. Donald Sullivan versus Kathy Mead, assault and battery. It looks as if we handed on more than just our names.
The people of Montserrat today couldn't list many of the great names of Irish history, but there are two they all know: Arthur Guinness and Oliver Cromwell. The name of Guinness is, of course, held in high esteem. while that of Cromwell is mentioned with almost the same dread as in Ireland. It was under the press ganging of Cromwell that hundreds of people from Cork, Kilkenny and Drogheda were expelled to the West Indies. They would have arrived just as the first importations of African slaves took place. So, both cruelly uprooted from their homes, Irish and African Negro shared a common suffering, a common grievance, and for the most part lived together in peace and common understanding. However, there is a record of one insurrection of black slaves against their Irish masters.
St. Patrick's Day was chosen because the Irish would have been celebrating that day. And the slaves thought that this was a good day to perhaps take them unawares. In the end, the plot was betrayed by slaves themselves, and this could stem from perhaps some love for the Irish masters, I don't know.
Montserrat Catholics today are centred mainly on the area around Plymouth. This is probably due to the influence of one of the most famous Montserrat Irish families, the Hamiltons. Before the Catholics were allowed to have a church in the town, the Hamiltons gave their large business premises on Parliament Street as a place of worship. The building is still called Treselyan, or Shamrock House. The occasional priest visitor to Montserrat said Mass there. It kept a remnant of the faithful together.
I pray, Lord, that whatever I do, or whatever my hands find to do, Lord, it may be prosperous. I pray that whatever I do, it may be a help to others. What I can do, Lord, help me to do. Give me courage that I might be able to learn and labor truly for my honest living, that I will never beg my bread as long as I live. To Lord.
But whatever their present religious affiliations, the people of Montserrat still have a faith in the presence of God and the reality of His will in their lives, which is very similar to the country faith of the Irish. There must have been times when the Irish emigrant workers in Montserrat felt as if they were walking through the deep mists of a soft summer's day in Ireland. 4,500 miles to the northeast lay home, but once they left it, few returned to make that long and expensive journey across the Atlantic. So they tried to make Montserrat a home from home, a place where the old Irish customs and comforts would be enjoyed and preserved.
I've always heard that we speak with a distinct Irish brogue. That came to Montserrat traditionally, I think, because my mother told us of illicit distilling in the mountains. And the distillers used to seek a very a valley away from, almost away from habitation to do the distilling. And this rum was called Mountain Dew. And it was perfectly white, not colored at all. It was sold very cheap. I think it was 3 penny for a half a bottle then.
Are you a dancer yourself?
Not very much, but my mother was a great dancer. And at evening sometimes when she was at leisure, she used to dance the jig and show us the real Irish dance. So Irish is really seem to be in the blood. It is.
Ethnologists have described the Irish as the whitest race in the world. Certainly in the US, where Irish and Negro have lived in close proximity, the result has often been acute tension. Yet here in Montserrat, Irish and Negro have lived side by side in peace. Black or white, most of them didn't choose to come to Montserrat. Yet once here they formed a relationship which must be almost unique. It survived the running battles of French and English settlers. It survived the social revolution which brought about the ending of slavery. It even survived an occasional internal insurrection. And in Montserrat, Irish and Negro haven't just lived together in peace as two separate communities, but have merged into what is in effect almost a new race. Black in colour, but possessing many of the best traits of the Irish. Perhaps the white Irish of Ireland and America today have something to learn from the black Irish of Montserrat.
I've heard that the Irish are very friendly people, and I think that we took pages out of the Irish book for friendliness. In fact, Montserrat is known to be one of the most, or the most friendly island of the West Indies. You find people, as they go along, they say good morning, good afternoon. They like to converse. I mean, strangers don't look like strangers to them. They're really very friendly and hospitable. So, and I think that's typical of the Irish, very typical of the Irish.
To the world, he's a hero. To the people of Ennis in County Clare, he's one of their own. And they were waiting for him, turning out in their hundreds to welcome the boxing legend back to his ancestral home. Greeted with a roar that could rival even the rumble in the jungle, the 3 times former world heavyweight champion, now suffering from Parkinson's disease, was here to unveil a monument near the spot where his ancestral home once stood. But how on earth does the world's greatest living boxer trace his roots back to County Clare? Muhammad Ali's great-grandfather Abe Grady was born in Ennis, but he emigrated to Kentucky in the 1860s. There he married a freed African-American slave. They had a son, John Lewis Grady, who married Birdie Moorhead, and she gave birth to Odessa Lee Grady, who married Cassius Clay Sr. They, in turn, had a son, Cassius Clay Jr., who, as we all now know, later changed his name to Muhammad Ali. Today, the Turnpike Road in Ennis is lined with neat council houses, none prouder than the home of the late Eileen O'Grady, whose daughter Mary kissed and hugged her famous distant cousin. Muhammad's boxing days may be long behind him, but could it be that his ancestry had something to do with his success? With 37 knockouts and 19 successful title defences, he must surely have a claim to have inherited something of the luck of the Irish.
Ali.